Previously, Carol pretended she intended to kill Daryl, and Janet agreed to cooperate with her. Near Nest, Janet prepared to kill a group of people, including Carol, turning them into weapons to attack Nest. Carol, along with Cadron, escaped toward Nest on an ATV. To clear the path for the zombies, Janet's elite team launched a shell that hit the castle gate with precise accuracy. Carol just recovered when she realized that the zombies were already close at hand. At Cadron's loud urging, she slammed on the gas and charged straight out. The guards blocked in front of the ATV and shot to stop it, but Carol still accelerated forward. What the guards didn't know was that there were hundreds of rabid zombies just outside the gate. By the time they heard the commotion, it was already too late. They were instantly knocked to the ground by the zombies, while the guards farther away began to flee. Those pinned beneath the zombies could only despair as they were torn apart. As the last wave of zombies charged through the gate, Janet's army also arrived on the battlefield. Carol drove the ATV in constant zigzags, dodging obstacles. At the end of the path, another guard tried to block her, but she slammed on the brakes, knocking him to the ground. As the ATV came to a stop, Cadron shouted, urging her to release his restraints. At that moment, several rabid zombies charged toward them. Carol grabbed a weapon, firing a shot at the approaching zombies before turning to tell Cadron to stay still. Then she raised an axe and swung it at the chains holding him, but another guard approached from nearby, shouting at them to drop their weapons. Carol and Cadron were unsure what to do when, suddenly,
Wrong. I'm demoted.
What about you?
Tell Dixon I did it for the boy.
Cadron finished speaking and then turned and charged forward. Carol had saved his life, and he wanted to buy her some time. If he could hold back this wave of zombies, it would spare them a lot of chaos and trouble. Meanwhile, Isabel was brought into the interrogation room. At Lo Zhang's signal, the guard untied Isabel. Isabel knew torture awaited her, but she still firmly refused to comply. Lo Zhang was not angry. He led Isabel in recalling Lauren's past, explaining that Nest had chosen Laurent as the savior solely because of his mysterious origins and his uncanny ability to understand people's hearts. They used prophecy to spread his story and grow the Union of Hope. A year ago, when the time was right, they intended to call Laurent back, using the savior's influence to stabilize the situation, rallying all followers to unite against Janet. Upon hearing the truth, Isabel felt a sense of relief. These people were hypocrites, exploiting faith to manipulate the masses, when in reality they were only after power and control.
It's not strength, Lo Zhang. It's desperate, misguided, and it's savage.
Sounds like Daryl talking.
No, it's me.
You yourself said how special the boy was all those years ago.
He's special. He thinks and feels in a way that humanity needs in order to survive. But he's human. He can bleed, he can be hurt, he can die. Like Jesus, like Muhammad, like Buddha.
This is a waste of time.
Correct.
Standing up, Lo Zhang continued, all we need to do is prove this faith. Isabel instantly understood. This group had calculated everything, whether or not Laurent is immune to the zombie virus. As long as the verification ritual proceeds smoothly, it will be a done deal in their favor. Suddenly,
Intrusion au portail. Ils sont dans la montée.
Lo Zhang wiped a bit of blood from his face, then casually picked up a dagger from the table and plunged it into Isabel's body. Seeing Lo Zhang in a stunned daze, Jacinta quickly stepped forward, pulling him back and reminding him that they had more urgent matters. They must leave immediately. No one confirmed whether Isabel was dead or alive. She was simply left there on the spot. Elsewhere, Carol made her way into a narrow alley in the residential area. As she reached the corner, she saw a family fleeing for their lives. While the guards covering their escape fell one after another, Carol quickly pressed herself against the wall to hide. Sure enough, the pursuers burst out right after. Carol couldn't ignore it. So,
Excuse?
after taking down two soldiers, Carol immediately ran down the passage she had just come through, heading for the exit. She hadn't expected to encounter another patrol just as she stepped out. Carol was about to sneak up on the soldier, highly alert, turned to check his surroundings and started walking toward her hiding spot. With a swift strike, Carol managed to ambush him, and after pulling out her knife, she turned to continue on her way. Not knowing Daryl's exact location, she had no choice but to follow the path, hoping for some luck. Meanwhile, Isabel, who had been unconscious for a long time, finally woke up. It took her a moment to recall what had happened, and the sharp pain reminded her that she needed to save herself. She struggled, slowly rising from the floor. 10 minutes later, Isabel was painstakingly making her way out of the room, her steps sluggish and shaky as gunshots echoed intermittently in the distance. Janet's forces had already reached this area. The guards at the entrance were fully engaged in battle, but Isabel didn't think about seeking help. Instead, she dragged herself forward, leaving bloody footprints with each step. The guards fell one after another, none of them noticing the severely injured woman. Isabel continued along the wall, determined to return to the prison to rescue Daryl. The fighting would end sooner or later, and whether her side won or lost, they would kill them both. Just then, a dark figure suddenly lunged out from nearby. As soon as Isabel heard the noise, she saw zombies pounce at her. It took Isabel a moment to regain her composure and look up at the woman who had just fired her gun. Daryl quickly approached. Seeing how badly injured Isabel was, she looked around and, finding no immediate danger, helped Isabel over to the wall. It was a simple guard rest area, offering them a place to use briefly. Daryl found some cloth on a nearby chair, intending to tend to Isabel's wounds. She had intended to leave quickly, but seeing Isabel's condition, she found a blanket and draped it over her. Isabel sensed that Carol had another motive.
What are you doing here?
I'm looking for a friend of mine from America.
At the same time, a man ran down the hallway toward the prison cells, with a rabid zombie close on his heels. Frantically, he searched for the cell keys, hoping to escape his pursuer. Luckily, he managed to lock himself, and just as the zombie lunged, the man slowly backed away, while the zombie scratched and howled at the bars. But soon it shifted its attention elsewhere, and the man sighed in relief, grateful to have survived. Daryl silently observed him. When the man finally noticed him, Daryl raised his shackled left hand, signaling that he could join the fight. With his flail in hand, Daryl dispatched anyone daring enough to approach him with clean, ruthless precision. Even when facing armed soldiers, he showed no fear. Suddenly, a zombie attacked the soldier from the side, and Daryl's flail swiftly smashed down on the next person's head. In this place, there was no need to discern friend from foe. He could rely on instinct alone to kill. From confusion to shock, from mutual recognition to tearful embraces, true family members appear when help is needed most. No matter the obstacles, they must ensure each other's safety. 5 minutes later, Carol brought Daryl to Isabel. Daryl rushed over in a panic. He hadn't expected to see a scene like this. He quickly pulled back the blanket to check, only to see that the cloth Isabel pressed against her wound was soaked with blood. He hurriedly grabbed what remained to try to stop her bleeding.
It's not too late. Not like this.
Isabel, with slow but determined resolve, refused his help. Her wound was between her ribs, piercing her internal organs. There was no chance left for her. She only wanted to stay with Daryl for a little while longer.
We can do that together.
Make sure he's taken care of. That he knows I'm always.
Without hesitation, Daryl nodded. Having already considered Isabel as family, he promised to take them all back to America, but he'd never imagined it would end like this. Goodbyes are always so sudden, and so heartbreaking. Carol offered Daryl silent comfort, knowing he must have been through so much. Perhaps, in the end, only time could heal all of this. Half an hour later, Daryl and Carol had successfully escaped from Nest. Daryl walked briskly, repeatedly urging Carol to keep up. Although Carol wasn't sure why Daryl was in such a rush, she could tell he was in a bad mood. So she deliberately brought up the plane and talked about going home. Everyone in Alexandria missed him dearly, but Daryl didn't respond at all.
You knew her pretty well. I know. Who is she talking about taking care of?
That's why.
Meanwhile, inside Nest, Losun was still fighting back with all his strength. In just a few moves, he knocked the soldiers to the ground, but the others had already been subdued. Just as he was about to strike again, a voice suddenly ordered him to stop. Janet's main forces had arrived, signaling that the battle's outcome was settled. Janet stepped forward, reminding him that the entire castle was now under military control, and he'd be better off abandoning his futile resistance. Though he was unwilling, Losun lowered his head and accepted his fate. Half an hour later, Janet began interrogating Losun, trying to extract Lawrence's whereabouts. Unexpectedly, Lo-sung advised her to stop searching. That child, he said, was merely a tool for them, but God had always been on his side, protecting him from the likes of them. Janet couldn't help but argue.
Does the American work for God?
We all serve him. Whether we believe or not, even you.
So if I find the boy, it will prove God is on my side. Ratisser les environs, ne pas pu aller bien loin.
After giving the order to pursue, Janet turned to Lo-sung. The battle between their factions had already been decided, but Janet still wanted Lo-sung to understand before he died that, in the face of absolute power, God's choices were irrelevant. Elsewhere, Daryl finally reached the cave and called out loudly for Laurent, but there was no one inside. His mind was a whirlwind of confusion. Where could Laurent have gone? He crouched down and touched the ashes in the fire pit. The coldness told him that Laurent and Fallow had left a long time ago. Daryl considered the worst-case scenario that Laurent and Fallow might not have escaped Nest at all. Just then, he rushed toward a stone wall, removed a loose stone, and found a Rubik's Cube inside.
He was here.
Okay.
He left this for me.
Okay, hey. Let's find him together, okay?
A look of relief crossed Daryl's face, and he nodded before turning to head back out. Since Laurent left the Rubik's Cube here, it means he and Fallow can't have gone far. Daryl and Carol walked along the path for a long time, and their moods gradually began to relax. They each began recounting their experiences along the way, and eventually, the conversation returned to Alexandria. As they walked, Daryl and Carol looked at the manor house not far away at the same time, and then stopped. Carol reflected on everything that had happened over the past few days. Amidst a series of surprises and accidents, she arrived in this strange but fascinating place.
Is you speaking French? Me, you here? This is crazy.
No, it's stupid.
It's crazy.
Daryl and Carol bickered like children, making the journey feel far less dull. Carol brought up Cadron, mentioning how he had pointed her in the right direction and helped her in the heat of battle. Daryl was surprised. Cadron had been hunting him relentlessly, yet he'd also helped him twice at critical moments, each time saying it was for Lauren's sake. Cadron was a truly complex and puzzling man. So, will Daryl and Carol find Laurent in the end?